In this lesson, we are going straight to discussing the concept of supply in economics. Supply itself means the amount of a good or a service that a producer is willing to sell at each price. Of course, you see that there is on one side of the illustration in terms of a graph, you'll have prices of goods and services. So various prices of goods and services. Then we'll have quantity supplied at each price that is indicated. So the whole of that, the relationship between a range of prices and the quantity supplied at those prices, the whole of that is what refers to as what is called supply. So we said we have quantity supplied, which of course refers to a specific point on the supply curve in terms of the quantities of goods that correspond to a specific price. And then we have price. Price is what the producer receives for selling one unit of a good or a service. So we will dive deep into exploring the concept of supply, and we'll also use a supply curve to describe the quantities a seller is willing to sell or produce and sell at different prices at the end to illustrate the law of supply. But then the assumption in this case is that we are operating in a capitalistic market, in a free market, in a capitalistic economy, and that for the law of supply to hold, there are factors that affect, of course, quantity supplied and the prices. So the assumption will be that we are only varying the prices of goods and services, and all the other factors are held constant for us to describe or discuss the law of supply. So we have this concept called ceteris paribus, which means we are holding all other factors constant and varying only one factor. So let's get into discussing the law of supply as a start. And we see that we are talking of the supply side. Initially, we had said that the supply side, of course, there are two forces in the market. There is the demand, which is the consumers that are responsible for pushing demand. And then the supply side, the producers or the companies that produce goods and services that are responsible for the supply side. What we are varying in this case, or the main variable here, is prices of goods and services. So we see that a price increase almost always leads to an increase in the quantity supplied of that good or the service, while a price decrease will decrease the quantity supplied. So we see that, because we said if prices increase, then quantity supplied increases. If prices, and I use P to denote price, if this decreases, then the effect on the quantity supplied is there will be a decrease in the quantity supplied. This we are saying is an illustration of the law of supply. So assuming that all other variables that affect supply are held constant, with only prices of goods and services as the only variable that will affect quantity supplied, then the law of supply states that at higher prices, there'll be a higher quantity supplied, and at a lower price, there'll be a lower quantity supplied. So looking at this relationship, you see that there is a direct relationship. So there is a direct relationship between one is prices and quantity supplied. There's a direct relationship between prices and quantity supplied, meaning that when the price increases, producers are willing to make and sell more quantities of the good. Then when prices decrease, producers tend to produce and sell fewer quantities of the good. This is best illustrated in a curve, and this curve is called a supply curve. In a normal Cartesian plane, you will have on one side the vertical axis here, which is the y-axis. Here is where we represent price in Kenya shillings, or you could use any other currency that is relevant in your context. Then we have an x-axis, the horizontal axis here, which in this case will represent quantity supplied, which is in terms of number of units. And we said an increase in prices will cause an overall increase in the quantity supplied. The decrease in prices will cause a decrease in the quantity supplied. So as we said, a direct relationship. And this curve will look like this. It will be sloping from the left to the right upwards, like this. This is supply curve. We indicate here supply curve. So that's basically the most a very simple illustration of the supply curve on the law of supply. For example, if you pick any point, let's say this is price P1 here, that corresponds to, here you'll have a quantity Q1. Assume there is an increase in the price of goods and services from P1 to P2, then you will see when we interpolate this, it corresponds to a higher quantity supplied in the x-axis. And that's basically what we said about the law of supply. There are two concepts that need to be distinguished. In this case, we have one concept called a change in supply. Then we have the other one called change in quantity supplied. Change in quantity supplied. Let's see what they are. Here, we see that if what changes is only the prices of goods and services, all other factors held constant, then a change in the prices of goods and services will produce a change in the quantity supplied. So this change in quantity supplied is as a result of price changes only. And we are calling this a movement along the supply curve. So a change in quantity supplied is basically as a result of, we said, price changes. And it is what we call a movement along the supply curve. For example, if you go back to the curve that I initially sketched, look at price P1 and price P2, and where that intersects with quantity Q1 and quantity Q2. Say, for example, that this first intersection here is our point A, and the second intersection here on the curve, these are points on the curve, is our point B. So when price changes from P1 to P2, then the points on the supply curve, there is a movement from point A to point B, like that. So basically this is what we are calling a movement along the supply curve, and it is caused by price changes only, and it only changes quantity supplied. Let's look at a change in supply, which refers to a shift. So this change in supply refers to a shift. This is basically a shift in the supply curve. So the overall supply, shift in the supply curve. So depending on whether the factors that are making this shift to occur are leading to either an increase in supply or a decrease in supply, then you will see that this curve may shift either to the right or to the left. And when the curve is shifting to the right, we say that supply is increasing. So we say that supply has increased. When it is shifting to the left, we say that supply has decreased. So supply has decreased. Maybe it would be best to see how these shifts occur in the form of a graphical illustration. And I will have a supply curve here. As usual, this is y-axis, the vertical one, which represents prices, and I will have my currency there. Then we have x-axis, which we are plotting quantity supplied in terms of number of units. So the quantity is there. Then our first supply curve is this. So supply curve. This is our very first supply curve. Then assuming that, of course, we'll see the factors that cause a shift in the supply curve. We'll discuss them in detail. But we said a shift in the supply curve is not caused by price changes. Price changes are only responsible for a movement along the supply curve, which we said is a change in the quantity supplied. If, for example, other factors such as maybe cost of factors of production or an increase in the number of producers, improvement in terms of technology happen, and they cause an increase in supply, say that increase in supply will be on the Cartesian plane here in terms of the supply curves will be a movement to the right. So this is the right. Then you have a new curve here. Let's call this supply 1. So this movement to the right here signifies an increase in supply. Then the same factors that we alluded to, for example, say technology has become obsolete, or there is increase in terms of government taxation, or factors such as the number of producers has reduced, or there is an increase in the cost of factors of production. And that means supply is going to reduce. And a reduction in terms of supply is a shift to the left. So we'll have a shift to the left like this. Then our new supply curve, supply 2, will be here. So we say this signifies decrease in supply. Let's see how this happens. For example, take any point like this point as our price P1. Then you try to draw like this. Wherever each point touches the supply curves, you plot that downwards to see changes in terms of the quantities supplied. And you see Q1 here, you have Q2 here, and here you have Q3. So for example, P1 in correspondence to our very first supply curve, we see that we will be at quantity supplied 2. But then when supply increases at the same price, without a change in terms of the prices, we see that when we move from S0 to S1, there has been an increase in supply without there being a change in terms of the prices. So at the same price, the quantity that is supplied has increased from Q1 from Q2 to Q3. Yeah, that's an increase in terms of supply. Then look at a change from S0 to S2, this green curve that is illustrated here. What you notice is at the same price that our quantity has reduced from quantity 2 to quantity 1, and basically it's this sort of a movement from the original curve towards the left, which shows a decrease in supply. And that's it. I think that's the best way to summarize movement along the supply curve, which we said is as a result of changes in prices of goods and services, and changes in supply, which is a total shift either to the left or to the right of the original supply curve caused by other factors other than changes in prices of goods and services. I think that's well understood. Then we'll proceed to look at factors that cause a shift in the supply curve in the next lesson.